Hi friends, my name is Lilstarnerd. Welcome to today's semi-spooky video. And by spooky, nothing spooky is happening, but it is October, so some decorations. I think next year one of the big things that I want to buy myself is like nice lighting equipment. I think something happened to my camera and the exposure settings just don't work anymore. I feel like my lighting used to be good, and now every video just seems so dark. Anyways, thank you to my patrons. Your names are on screen. I love you guys so much. You're so wonderful. Thank you for supporting me. I also want to let you know that I actually started a new Patreon tier based on your feedback. A few people reached out to me and wanted the idea of a slightly less expensive tier, but still had physical rewards. I did a poll on Instagram to see what was the second most requested reward between an exclusive video, a print, and a sticker. So I wanted to see what you guys were most interested in as a kind of bonus reward for that tier. So it's $10 and you get all of the stuff that you get for $5, the monthly podcast, early access art, stuff like that, and you get the monthly sticker. So it's a little bit more of an affordable option for only $10 a month. So if that's something that intrigues you, go check that out. My Patreon will, as always, be linked down below. Anyways, let's talk about today's video. Is this gonna show through too much? No, good. I'm painting on this circle canvas. I already filmed it, so I'm not gonna show it to you. I started this canvas probably over a year ago, and I was gonna do an oil painting on it, and it was for a specific purpose. I was gonna do a chiaroscuro contest thing, and I had my friend pose for it. I had her set up all this like lighting, and I made her take pictures for me, but I never painted it, and I felt really bad. And I really liked the photos she took, so I wanted to try again. Obviously, I missed the deadline for the contest. Why not do it anyways, right? It's not particularly spooky, but it does feel a little bit. It is a little on theme because it's got like the crazy lighting, and I put some sparkles in the background, so I don't know, maybe it's magical. Instead of oil, I wanted to use acrylic just because that's a little quicker, but I already had a base of oil down on the canvas, like a really thin layer. So I Googled, and I think you can wait like 6 months and then you can safely put acrylic on top of oil, but I didn't want to take any risks. So I did a couple layers of gesso and then I painted. Before we get into that painting process, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Skillshare. If you somehow don't already know about Skillshare, Skillshare is an online learning community of thousands of classes and members all ready to further their creative journey. It is the largest online learning platform for creatives, with a super wide range of classes with topics ranging everywhere from woodworking to portraiture to crocheting and everything in between. Whether you want to dip your toe into a bunch of different creative topics or you want to do a massive deep dive into one specific skill, Skillshare has your back with plenty of classes available. But that's not all. That is not the only way that Skillshare supports creatives. They also have plenty of class options available for the business side of things, like marketing, entrepreneurship, social media, productivity, and so much more. Since we're painting a portrait today, I wanted to show you a few classes that I really like that are about this topic. We have a realistic portrait painting for beginners, the complete course by Beth Gatza, which is super in-depth with beautiful, beautiful artwork, and you can just tell so much time and love was poured into this class. And then we have portrait painting from a photo with a full palette by Christy Gordon. Again, a super thorough course with beautiful artwork, a beautiful artist taking you step by step through the process. If you would also like to start learning new things, further your creative journey, or further your business, definitely check out Skillshare in the link below. The first 500 people to use my link will get access to one of Skillshare's best ever offers. You get 30 days free and 40% off your first year of membership, so make sure to check that out now. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring. Without further ado, let's get into the painting. So as I said, I didn't really have anything specific to talk about today, so I asked you guys on Instagram for some topics or questions. This won't necessarily be like a Q&A because my responses will go a bit deeper and be a bit chattier, but we will be covering like a few topics as I answer a few different questions. Not a lot though. So it's not a full-on Q&A. I was just going to talk about one topic based on a question I had gotten, but then I realized I got asked like a few really good questions that I had enough thoughts on, and they all kind of went together and felt relevant to both the process of this piece you're watching now and also like where I'm at with my art. So I couldn't help but include them all. Obviously, I can't answer every single question that I got today, but I also thought that, now because of that, it would be a good time to mention that if you ever have any question for me, please consider reviewing at least the titles of all my other videos. I got a lot of questions for today about things like dealing with burnout, which I have a whole video on. I frequently get asked to make videos I've already made or talk about things I've already talked about, so if you asked a question today that I didn't answer, or you've ever left a request for a topic or a video idea, please consider watching my old stuff or looking for that topic in my previous videos, because chances are I've already made it. Anyways, let's get right into answering these cues. The first question is, how do you know when you've improved enough? And this is such a fascinating question, and one that I literally just recently asked myself. If you're wondering that about yourself or your art, let me ask you this question. Improved enough for what? What is the benchmark that you're assessing here? Improved enough compared to when? I've recently decided to, hopefully, take my art career in a new direction, and it's one that I've consistently said I'm not interested in, I'm not worried about, and I'm not ready for it. But I experienced something that made me realize I do want to try. And it's not like I suddenly think I'm just so much better at art that now I am good enough for it. The fear of failure and rejection is absolutely still there, and they are still very real possibilities. But for some reason, I felt ready. All of a sudden, I felt ready. Despite those fears, I thought, I'm never gonna know if I'm quote unquote good enough or not if I don't try. And it's not like I only get one shot at these things. I plan on making art for a long time. If I get rejected now, then great. I know I still have work to do, and next time I feel ready, I can try again. I think it's more about how you feel. Do you feel ready for these things? Of course, there will be things that require applications and resumes and portfolios that will attempt to tell you if you or your art are good enough or not, but in the grand scheme of things, those are one-offs. They're fleeting and they're not representative of your life's art or its worth as a whole. But if I'm honest, I don't think this question is asking about applications and portfolios. I think it's asking, when will I know if I'm a good enough artist? But again, good enough for what? To keep making art? To make the piece you've always dreamed of but felt too intimidated to make? To show your art to people? No one will ever be able to tell you the answers to those questions except for you. Unfortunately, I wish it were easier, right? Recently, I took a stab at recreating a piece that I've always wanted to do for a really long time, The Night of the Flowers. I did it in a recent Make It Gay video. But I put off doing it for so long because I was afraid I wasn't good enough to do it, that my skills weren't up to par. But one day, for some reason, I felt ready. I thought, what am I waiting for? Why would I not be good enough at this point? What's holding me back? I'll never know if I'm good enough unless I try, and then I'll have my answer, right? I'll know if I need to keep practicing and try again, or maybe I'll realize that I'm a lot further along than I thought I was. And I do think it's fair to feel, quote unquote, not good enough for some things. But let's be honest, what that really means is you're not ready. Doesn't mean you're not good enough, it's not a valuation of you, it means you're not ready. You might not be ready to tackle a months-long painting, or something really large and detailed, or drawing without reference. You might not feel ready to show your work in a gallery or share it online. Those are all things that totally make sense that you might not be comfortable with doing, you might not feel ready to do. But instead of waiting to be good enough, which if you wait to feel that way, you never will, and instead start taking little steps to get yourself ready for it. And one day you're gonna realize that you are ready. For many of us, we will be making art for most of our lives, if not the rest of our lives, in some form or frequency. And throughout that time, you will always be improving, developing your skills, learning new things, changing your perspective or style. Even if right now you feel you've peaked, your art simply cannot look the same forever. It will change. Over time, you just get better at things. The more you practice, the more you see different things, it will affect the way your art looks. No matter what, throughout your lifetime of doing art, the longer you do art, the better you will get and the more it will change. Sometimes it'll get better, and honestly, sometimes it will get worse. But if you sit around waiting to feel good enough, waiting to feel like you've finally peaked, you're finally making real art, or you're finally a real artist, you will be waiting forever. As your skills grow, so will your standards. Every time you get close to the finish line, you will subconsciously move it a couple yards back, and you will forever be chasing something you will never allow yourself to reach. So just remove the finish line. Remove the idea that you will ever be good enough, because you won't be. You will never know all there is to know. You will never be a perfect artist. You will never be able to go years without making a single thing you dislike. I don't know a single artist ever, including in history, who thought they were good enough, who didn't feel like they had nothing left to learn. When people say, am I good enough? Not only good enough for what, but what are your standards for good enough? Like when I'm looking at my own art and I ask, am I good enough to make this piece? Like, what does that mean? I can draw people, and if there's a person in the painting, then yeah, I'm good enough, right? Like, what are you waiting for? When you're evaluating good enough, what are you evaluating? I think it's such a vague question because it's really about fear. Because it's not about whether or not you're good enough. It's not about the finish line at all. It's about this possibly lifelong journey that you're lucky and privileged enough to experience. You may as well enjoy it. Stop creating these invisible, unnecessary barriers for yourself. Stop grading yourself for no reason. Make art because you enjoy it. Allow yourself to learn and grow naturally, practice often, and take advantage of opportunities as they come to you. Stop asking yourself if you're good enough, because the more you ask that, the more you're looking at the negatives, and the answer will always be no. It's fine to feel like you have weak points. It's fine to critique yourself. I do it all the time. But if those critiques become vague enough to feel that you're not good enough, you need to change your perspective, because like I said, it's not about the final product. It's about you and being lucky enough to make art and doing it because you like it. This question kind of goes hand in hand with the second one. How to branch out in art, even if you're scared it'll be ugly or bad. I talk a lot about this in a previous video about my own relationship with my art titled Why I Hate My Art. If you're interested, you can go watch that for like some further thoughts. But it continues to shock me how scared some artists are of this and how much it holds them back. Like the psychology of so many artists and their relationship with their work fascinates and frankly saddens me. Why do you expect yourself to be perfect? Why do artists hold themselves to such an unreasonably high standard? Why are artists so afraid of making bad stuff? So, to put it in a different perspective, the sun exists every day. Do we get to see it shine every day? Think of your oldest friend. Have they always been a perfect friend to you every day that you've known each other? Have you been a perfect friend to them every day? Does your hair look perfect every day? If you're a runner, can you run a perfect mile every day? In everything that exists for a long period of time, there are bad days. There are off days. Of course that's true for your art. Your ability to make art, your relationship with it, it exists every day. Statistically speaking, it is impossible for it to be perfect or even good every day. Let's say you're an artist who actively practices for 30 years. 10 years now, 20 years in the future, you're going to be practicing for 30 years. And on average, you produce some sort of artwork once a week, whether it's a small doodle or a large painting and everything in between. So that's one bit of art every week for 30 years. That is almost 1,700 pieces of work. You expect every bit of 1,700 pieces of work to be good, to be satisfactory? That's insane. Like, statistically speaking, that's impossible. But beyond the numbers, think about how throughout those 30 years, there are endless factors that will affect your art and your ability to make it. Your mental health, your physical health, time, money, energy, happiness. How much inspiration you might feel, your social life, your environment, your access to supplies. Maybe you've gone a few months without creating and now you're a little rusty. Even just the days that you feel off for no reason at all. Inevitably, you will make bad art. You will make ugly art. That is not a bad thing. Accept that it will happen and it will stop being so scary. What are the consequences of making bad and ugly art? What bad things might happen? You might be a bit disappointed. You might have to admit that it's not currently within your skill set. You might have to start a commission over. You might be a bit late to a deadline. Are any of those things so terrible? Will those lead to the end of the world? Will it hurt someone? No. Making bad art does not mean that you are a bad artist. Like I said, in my opinion, art is about the journey. When it comes to trying new things, don't make it about assessing the final work, yourself, or your ability. Make it about having fun when trying new things, when exposing yourself to new ideas, when learning new techniques or skills. Make it a learning opportunity. Set yourself free from the expectation of perfection. Accept that bad and ugly art are a part of the process, and you're going to have a lot more fun. It really does continue to astound me how artists really let themselves be held back by this fear of being bad and seem to have this standard for themselves that everything they do has to be good or perfect. And then they ask themselves, like, am I good enough? Nothing, well, when you're stuck in this cycle, like, nothing's going to be good enough. And for me, like, I definitely have that frustration of feeling like my art isn't where I want it to be, right? And so that's why I talk about, like, it's not about the final product. I don't really care what the pieces look like because it's about having fun. It's about enjoying the process. And that's why I don't really care if I make bad stuff. And even beyond that, there are some days that I just want to create, but I don't really care. I don't care to try hard enough to make it look good. So of course it's going to be ugly, but it's about getting to use supplies that I want to use that day. When you try new things, you don't know how those supplies work, right? Of course, the result isn't going to look the way you want it to look, but that's okay. I just don't understand why artists have this expectation of themselves and why they let it hold themselves back so much. And I really encourage you guys to let those expectations go. Like, who cares if you make bad stuff? Who is it hurting? What does it matter? Statistically speaking, you have to make bad stuff. At some point, no matter how good you are or how hard you try, you're going to make bad stuff, objectively bad stuff, let alone whether or not you like it. You're going to make bad stuff. You're going to have bad days. Who cares? What does it hurt? Who cares? You're going to make art so often, for every bad piece, you're going to have at least one good piece, right? And maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe your percentage is going to be like 60 to 40, 75 to 25. Who cares? If you enjoy making art, then that shouldn't matter. Those were a bit heavier questions. So let's take a quick break to talk about something lighter for a second. I got a few questions asking if I ever plan to leave Florida, stuff like that. And, when it comes to finding my own place, what do I want it to look like? So as of now, I have no plans to leave Florida, like, ever. Of course, I want to travel and experience as many places as possible. But shockingly, I think I have found my home in Florida. I was born here, most of my family is from here, but I was raised in Virginia, which is a very, very different place. I was like in rural Virginia. And when we moved back here, I thought that I would hate it. I grew up not liking Florida at all. But the longer I'm here, the more I fall in love with it. I have never felt so healthy, both physically and mentally, more at peace with myself and my body. The change in my mental health has been astronomical. It's been insane. My hair looks better, my skin is better. I found a connection to water and the ocean that I never thought I would have. I love the plants and the animals. I have a wealth of inspiration at my fingertips. I genuinely don't think my mind or my body could handle another climate, but I do still want to experience different things. I hope I have the opportunity to live in a big city because I always dreamed of that as a kid. I would love some time on lots of land or like a farm or something. I want to live in all sorts of places, but I don't think I'll leave Florida for that. As for when I move out, I fully believe that the right place will come to me. So I have very little needs on my list, right? Because I don't want to limit my search and accidentally miss out on the right place because I was looking in the wrong direction. Like I'm not crossing off like condos, townhouses, houses, apartments. I'm not ignoring anything because I fully believe that I will find the right place. But I do hope that there is lots of natural light, a place for me to go on runs outside, some sort of studio space. And I think I want to decorate with like a mid-century modern feel. And I plan to keep my bedroom looking like a dead old lady's abandoned house. That's the goal, creepy and weird. I've been having lots of fun daydreaming about that stuff, if it ever happens. Next up, how do you stay motivated and on task even if you aren't feeling up for it? This is hard, and I really don't think my answer will be applicable to a whole lot of people because this is something that can really, really easily be affected by mental health, disorders, physical health, etc. I think it's really easy for me because I truly have no major roadblocks standing in my way. So, I think my answer is very vanilla, like a frankly privileged answer. So if you're someone who deals with this kind of issue and you hear my answer and you're like, what the fuck? I'm sorry. My answer is very simple. But the way I see it is there are some things that I simply have to do. It's not a matter of motivation, right? It's not a matter of okay, can I get myself? It's just a matter of it has to be done. I've definitely learned that in life, there are things that you just have to do. Like your taxes. No one wants to do your taxes, but I can't put those off. I have to do my taxes or there will be real world consequences. Some things just have to be done. And it's as simple as that for me. I can't express it in any different words. It just has to be done. And then there are other things, right, that do require motivation. And as a generally motivated person, I have no issues just letting myself off the hook sometimes. If there are things that I just don't want to do, I can't muster the motivation, okay, I'll do it next week, or I'll do it next month, or maybe I won't do it at all. But I can see why, if you are a generally unmotivated person, letting yourself off the hook would not be a good or healthy thing that could lead into really bad habits. But I can say that I used to be a very unmotivated and frankly lazy person, and a lot of it was derived from kind of mental illness. There were a lot of things that I just couldn't bring myself to do. And what changed things for me was realizing that, some things just have to be done, whether I like it or not. So often I come across tasks and I have to remind myself, you know what I mean? I'm feeling unmotivated, but I have to tell myself, you have to do it. It doesn't matter how you feel about it or if you don't want to, you have to. And every time I think of this stuff, like hearing this question, there's one moment that comes to my head immediately, and I find it really personally motivating because it happened to me, but I don't know if it will help anyone else, but I'm gonna share it just in case. I was learning how to change my car tire, and I couldn't lift the tire back onto the wheel. It was on the ground, it was in my hands, and I couldn't lift it and get it hooked onto the wheel to screw the bolts back on. And I asked my dad, what do I do? In this scenario that I can't lift it, what do I do? Because I'm picturing, me stranded on the side of the road somewhere, in the dark, stuck because I'm not strong enough to lift a stupid tire. And I'm expecting my dad to have a solution, or a trick, or a special way to do it, or even to just do it for me. But he just looks at me and he says, you have to. You don't have a choice. You just have to do it. No advice, no help, no trick. I have to do it. So I took a breath and I looked at the tire and I thought, okay, it has to be done. It just has to. And I tried again, and it was magically so easy. And ever since then, when I come across these situations where it's like, this has to be done, I think of that moment and I realized it's not going to be as hard as I think it is. And that's really helped. Another question: what are the sacrifices it takes to be an artist? How it affects friendships, mental health, etc. I'm assuming this is talking strictly about me doing it as my job, not just getting to do art in life in general. And obviously my job is not necessarily reflective of every artist's job, but I will say that there are definitely things that have taken some compromising. I also want to preface this by saying I'm very lucky to have the job that I do, and I love it. But one of the sacrifices is struggling to find a balance of sharing my personal life versus keeping stuff private. Sometimes it feels as if everything needs to be shared or put on display. Sometimes people can be very invasive and ask really personal questions. Also, the feeling that I need to monetize everything, or people will expect me to. I don't share certain things in vlogs. I showed a puzzle one time, and I got so many comments trying to tell me that I could do this with your puzzles, or you're supposed to do it this way, or telling me how to do it in the way that was the most productive or whatever. I was like, I just like doing puzzles. Even just by putting myself out there, people feel as if they have the right to say or know certain things. Like comments about my appearance, even if they're neutral or attempting to be compliments, it can be weird. Of course, I'm self-employed, so a lot of my money is set aside for taxes or necessary business expenses, which can be really frustrating. This job also takes a lot of time, so much time, and it's not contained to regular work hours. I can't leave it behind at work, right? People, whether it's viewers or supporters or customers or companies or whatever, can contact me at any time, all hours of the day or night, to my direct phone, and responding to them can fall through the cracks if I don't do it right away, which means work is frequently leaching into my personal time. So many things happen on weekends, like markets, so when everyone else wants to hang out or go to the beach or whatever, I have to decline because I'm working all day. Even just the act of actually putting my work out there can feel a bit like a sacrifice. It frequently gets stolen or recreated and copied, which that's something I want to make a whole separate video about, or it picked apart. And it's always the really personal art about my feelings or my body or pictures of loved ones that get copied or reposted or redrawn or whatever, which is super uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable and frustrating. The biggest sacrifices are just probably time being eaten away and the total blurred line of personal to work life. Okay, I think I've talked long enough. Thank you so much for sending in questions, if you did. I hope you found these answers helpful in some way, and let me know if there's anything you want me to clarify or whatever in the comments. Thank you to my beautiful friend Erin for letting me use this photo, for taking the photo for me, and for being patient. And also dealing with the fact that you turned out very oddly colored. In person, I swear in person it's really not that bad. Like, I'm looking at it and it's registering. It's making sense. I sent a picture to her and I was like, you look very orange. You're looking like a Cheeto. But I promise in person it's not that bad. I definitely got really lazy. I actually really like this hand. On this hand, I won't lie to you, I gave up. I was done at that point. I was feeling a little rusty when doing this painting. I don't do portraits nearly as often as I used to. And so when I do them, it takes a second to like get in the zone, which is fine, not a big deal. I think this ended up being, if you're an artist, I guarantee you like 99% of you will agree with me. It's really hard to satisfyingly draw people that you know really well. I know her face very well. I've known it for a very long time. I find her and all of my friends really difficult to draw or paint. So the fact that I'm not like hating this is wonderful. I'm really satisfied the fact that I feel like it's not a disservice to her face. So I'm really happy with it, and I like it. It is off center. But like, what can you do, right? Who cares? I like it. The more I look at it, the more I like it. I feel like on camera, I like it less, but I like it. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, the whole shebang, you know what to do. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you check out Skillshare down in the description. Thank you so much, Skillshare, for sponsoring. I'm gonna catch you on the flip side. Go get yourself a Halloween treat. Think of a new skill you would like to develop and go do some art. Bye, guys. See you in the spooky season. Bye.